everyone. Welcome to HERPath, the podcast for busy women looking for purpose, health, and happiness. We are so excited to kick off this podcast with you. We are 4 life coaches. We are busy career women who have families and busy, thoughtful careers. And each week we will be tackling different topics that are important to women and providing a wide array of perspectives. We will give you advice, we will give you tips, we will share our stories, and we will come at it from all of our different specialties. We know that you're going to find this time thoughtful, insightful, and once you get to know us, very entertaining. So let me introduce you to my wonderful co-hosts. So first up, we have Beth, who is a wellness coach finding freedom through food.
Hello, everybody. Good to see you.
And we have Gabby, who is a weight loss coach for women.
Hi, nice to meet you. I'm looking forward to chatting with you.
And Nancy, who's a transformational coach specializing in menopause.
Nice to see everyone.
And my name is Elise. I am a women's purposeful life coach, as well as a career and executive coach. Thank you for being with us today. Let's get started.
Hey, welcome everyone to this week's episode of HERPath podcast. This week we're going to be exploring the many versions of you and how to manage it all without feeling like you're burning the candle at both ends. Again, we are successful, busy professional women, and we've been able to juggle the many hats that we wear in just one day, whether it's mom, wife, partner, teacher, mentor, CEO, chauffeur, employer, business owner, doctor, lawyer, nurse, executive, and we can go on, all the different hats that we wear. And this week we are exploring all of that so we can take a step back and look at our lives from a different perspective. And what I'd like to do is just open up for Gabby, Nancy, and Elise, what it means to you all, the different versions of you. Elise, I'd like to start with you.
Yeah, first of all, I love this topic, and I love that you brought it up, Beth, because we have so many conversations about this in my coaching profession anyways. So I have 2 thoughts on all of this. So when I think about this topic, I have 2 points of view. First one is, yes, we show up differently in different situations, and it is fun to play with how you want to show up. Sometimes it's a badass boss. Sometimes you need to bring extra softness and extra kindness and extra grace. Sometimes you can be playful. Sometimes you need to be no BS. Sometimes you need to come in with an extra dose of patience. So that's one side. Yeah, it's fun to play with different sides. But the other point that I was funny, I was wrestling with this topic a little bit in a good way, because the more we learn about ourselves and the more we discover about ourselves and the more purposeful we are in relation to our values. And I always think about Nancy when I think about that, because Nancy always brings us back to our values. When you are living your purpose through your values, you will show up the same way everywhere. There won't be these many different versions of you. Or you'll pull out just different strengths for different scenarios. So that's my way of opening the conversation and making it a little bit murky, because I don't have a straightforward answer. I like the idea of playing, but I also like the idea of living with purpose through your values, and then you will show up much more consistently every time.
That's great. Thank you. I really like how you said there's different sides of you. And speaking of Nancy, I'm curious what your thoughts are and bringing back the values and showing up more consistently when you're drawing from that pool of your values and how you show up in the world.
Well, for sure, we all have different identities. And I like to make a list because it's just kind of fun to sit and reflect and just see how many identities we have. You can be the mother, the friend, the partner, the daughter, the aunt, There's a version of you that shows up at work. There's a version of you that you have in your own mind. The version that you think other people think of you, romantic you, happy you, sad you, the pissed off you. You can have as many versions of you as emotions, and within each lies a different version of you. And I think what's interesting is to realize what brings out the different aspects of us, because for sure, different thoughts create a myriad of different emotions that can mold us into different identities. Like, you ever been with someone who suddenly gets triggered and morphs in front of your own eyes? Well, something's activated an emotional pain within them, and then they go into a defensive pain protection mode. So when you begin to be conscious of these aspects of you, it can help you really dive in and see parts of you that are maybe unhealed. So a great question to ask, and I think Elise talked about this, is who do I need to become in order to resolve an issue, or who do I need to become in order to achieve a goal?
Yeah, I love that. Who do I need to become?
Mhm.
Yeah, it's like setting an intention. That is really powerful because we do, especially as women, we do need to show up in different ways in different scenarios. But I love the act of being purposeful and coming in ahead of the game saying, who do I need to be right now? Or how
Mhm.
do I need to show up right now?
Yeah. How do you need to show up? I love that. And there's different parts of ourselves, there's the outside piece and the inside piece. And you touched on that, Nancy. I really found that fascinating that as many different emotions that we have, that's as many different versions we have of ourselves. We're going to show up differently when we're pissed off versus when we're, completely delighted and excited for whatever is happening in the moment. And Gabby, I'm curious what the different versions of you, or the many versions of you, what that means.
When thinking about it, I kind of separated it into a few categories. So the first was version of myself, my self concept, like who do I think I am? And we all have a impression of ourselves. And I broke it down into roles. I'm a sister, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, doctor, friend, a community member, an entrepreneur, life coach, etc. And then there is a version that is my public self, where how other people acknowledge me. And there is a intentionality to how I present myself in my professional setting, as far as in my work, at my job. I present myself as an expert in my field. I literally, make sure that I look presentable, at work. You don't want to go to your doctor and see that your doctor looks tired and unkempt and ratty, because I'm giving advice to help people feel better. And if I am not playing that role and in presenting myself, putting my best foot forward, it's going to be challenging, which is part of my self-concept as well, right? It's going to be challenging for people to kind of trust my advice if it doesn't look like I'm taking care of myself. How's this person going to be able to take care of me? So there's my public self, how I present myself, and how I would like other people to acknowledge me out in public in each of those different roles that I play. And then there's the real, actual, or behavioral, like real me. And that shows up itself in the actions, or in the habits, or in my emotional presentation. So there's tired me. How am I when I'm actually tired? How do I actually act and show up when I'm tired? When I'm motivated, how am I when I'm motivated, when I'm excited about something, or when I'm gung-ho about something? There's me when I'm inspired, and the things that I do when I feel that or think that. There's imperfect me when, I make mistakes, or I don't stick to my plans, when I don't do what I say that I'm going to do. There's me that is unaware, or subconsciously not being mindful in the moment. And that is the real you when you show up. in my sense. And I call that the actual or behavioral me, like how I'm showing up in the things that I'm doing, my actions. And then another version is my ideal me. Who do I aspire to be? Who do I want to be? And that's also in all of those different roles. What kind of mother do I want to be? What kind of, weight loss coach do I want to be? What kind of just human being in the world do I want to be? Financially, how do I want to be? And then I started thinking how important it is for these kind of versions to kind of match are they all, can they all fit in the same person? Because it kind of seems schizophrenic a little bit sometimes when I, was looking at it. I'm like, how could you be ambitious, but also, tired and unmotivated and, want to give up sometimes? How does that all fit in there? But it actually does, because as a person, we have so many different roles. And sometimes one role or one actual self is going to predominate in the moment. And it's okay. There isn't anything wrong with that. But I also feel that if it's not matching up with your ideal self or with your purpose or with your the results that you want to achieve, that it's okay for you to redirect yourself and be mindful and make yourself aware, like, oh, I'm not being the kind of person that I want to be in this moment. And, kind of backtrack and reflect on that and see what's going on with you in that moment.
I love that. And I love how you brought up, it feels a little schizophrenic, because there are so many different aspects of our lives, and sometimes they're not congruent. And when they are opposite, they're competing against each other, it can feel very confusing and conflicting. And I think we are very complex creatures, and thinking about, creating and being purposeful with our lives and being intentional. Sometimes I feel like when things, all of us aspire to be better, be better at something, a better human or a better worker or whatever it is. And I think too, in being part of in the self-development world, it can be really easy to be hard on those aspects of ourselves that aren't quite to the level that we are expecting them to be, and to show up loving all of the versions of ourselves through the journey. And I think that is very challenging, and that's where coaching comes in really very important to give us that different perspective. A lot of times, I think many of us have very self-critical inner talk, especially successful professional women. I think it has, that there's a purpose to it, but then also to a point, it can be detrimental and stall us out a little bit. And there's the roles that you spoke of, Gabby, and like the inner parts too of, and I see Elise nodding what you
Yeah, and I actually wanted to kind of dive in a little bit more to that, because I love, Gabby, how you shared, here's all the ways we show up because we want to, or we think we need to, or society has told us. Like, I really love you sharing, how can I be a respected physician if I don't do what I say I'm, tell my patients to do, right? I get that. Is that true, or is that a thought? That's where some of that self-coaching comes in. But then when we get down to, how do I show up when it's just me? And how do I react? And I love the compliment or the confluence of the good, bad, and the ugly of who we are and how we show up. And I think, my question is, when I think about women today and the pressures that busy women have on them, from internal, from environmental, from societal, how do we give ourselves grace? How do we say, you know what? I am tired today and it's okay to be tired, or I'm having a bad day and I need some help. How That's really what I wanted to kind of just explore here. How do we show up? But how is it okay to show up as just who we are at that moment? Because I think many women will go to the ends of the earth to put a mask on when they're having a bad day, or they're exhausted, or they're not fulfilled, or they feel depleted. I'm curious about your thoughts on all of that.
I think for me, especially, working, well, we all work in healthcare, but working in healthcare and taking care of other people, um, I'll be honest, a lot of times, regardless of how my mood is that day, regardless of how I'm feeling physically that day, my job is literally to take care of other people and to hold space for them, listen to their concerns during that office visit. And the tired me, the not feeling so good me, that stays behind in that moment. And it took me a while to figure out how to do that, that it's not about me in that moment. And as soon as I open that patient door and have that interaction with my patient, it's their time in that moment. It's their time. And really to set the focus on them and to allow my mind to just focus on that person and not focus on how tired I feel or how, I sick I might feel in the moment. And it just takes practice to really be intentional in that moment, so that you can get the results that you want at that point in time. And then when I get home, I allow myself to let all of that work just stay exactly there and have the interactions that I want with the kids and my husband, and let myself be a little bit tired. Let myself acknowledge, oh my God, I feel like shit today. I'm glad I'm home. Now I can rest a little bit. But in order to be able to do that, again, some planning goes into that. In the weekends, I make sure that I have had some, get the groceries, get the meal planning done, get the things done, so that it allows me to get home and be able to just kind of unwind instead of worry about 20 other things that aren't done or need to get done. And if there are things that need to get done and aren't done, also taking the time in thinking about this through experience that it's okay if they're not done. It's still going to be there tomorrow. And no one's going to, suffer from it. The only one who suffers is me when I make myself worry about something that can be insignificant at the end of the day. So it does take a lot of intention and a lot of practice in deciding how I want to show up in these different situations and taking care of myself in those different situations ahead of time. So when I am tired and sick and still have to work, I've already thought about it ahead of time, how I want to show up and be okay with it.
I love that, planning ahead of time how you're going to feel. And I think that comes from knowing and practice. And
A whole lot of practice, yeah. Because you can burn yourself out, right? If you expect yourself to be at 100% all the time, when that's not the reality.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I hear you say there is a lot of self-compassion, right? Rather than self-criticism. So
Right.
shifting that mindset from, the compassion versus the criticism.
Right. Because then you make it all about you in certain situations when it's not about you. And it's my fault, or I did a shitty job today, or I didn't do the best that I could. And that just, for me at least, it doesn't do me any good. It doesn't give me many results that I want in my life. It doesn't feel good to me. It doesn't allow me to show up in a way that that is pleasant for other people. So
I love that. So planning ahead of time. And Nancy, is there something that you do to check in with yourself on a consistent basis?
One of my mentors taught me something called identity hacking a long time ago. And that is like finding qualities that you admire in other people and, maybe getting to know those people a bit. And then you can kind of model those, because they do say that we kind of assume the qualities of the people we hang out with. So I feel like it's really important to discern who you're spending time with, and, picking up qualities that you admire in other people.
I love that.
Love that.
Looking at it out of the lens again, like we spoke of before, of curiosity
Mhm.
and getting to kind of create your own recipe, or your own bread recipe. Yes, I'd like a little bit of that and a little bit of that. Ooh, I don't like that. That's
Exactly.
cinnamon's not for me, but I'll take some nutmeg. Um, I
Even
love
choosing
that.
qualities that you admire in other people,
Yeah,
and then just kind of borrowing those in a way
yeah.
can be kind of helpful.
Yeah. I wanted to pick up where Gabby talked about she leaves the intention at work so she can go home and be her just authentic self where she is. And I can't take credit for this, but I thought this was a brilliant. I learned this from one of my clients actually, which is so cool because I learned so much from my clients. But she, at the end of the day, when she's had a bad or stressful day, or she's feeling heavy and weighted about what's happened at work, she goes into the bathroom or closes the door to her office, and she literally starts at her head and dusts herself
Mm.
off, dusts all the stress and the badness that all the way down her body. So she literally dusts herself off, and then she washes her hands. And when she's done, that's her way of telling her body and her soul and her mind, leave it here. Don't take it with you. Just go home and be you.
That's great.
And I thought that was one of the coolest exercises. I'm shamelessly stealing it from her, and I'm going to use it with my clients because I just love it so much. It's a way of like physically
One,
taking the stuff from work and leaving it there.
That's
awesome.
beautiful. I love that.
Isn't that cool?
I am
Mhm.
going to shamelessly take that into
Mhm.
practice myself.
I have an essential oil spritz that I typically will spritz myself with at the end of the day, just to kind of do a little cleansing of all the things. A lot of times I'll do even a meditation that says, everywhere that my power I've given, I'm calling it back now, just to reclaim parts of myself that I feel like I've put out there and maybe haven't gotten back yet.
I love that. Do you have a script for or a mantra that you use that you could share with our viewers, our listeners?
It's just, I kind of reflect on the day and, see where I've kind of given all my energy to. And I just call it back. I say, come home to me, come back. It's really simple, but I think it can be really helpful because we give so much of ourselves throughout the day. And I think when we call it back home, we're giving it back to ourselves.
For
Yeah.
me, I feel as far as just separating that work self from home me, it's as soon as I turn off my work computer. So I'm like, like trying to finish up so I can get out. And then it gets to the point, and usually it's because I have to pick up, kiddos from school. So once 4 o'clock hits, it's like, all right, maybe one more minute, maybe 2 more minutes. Oh, and then there's a point when it's like, okay, if I leave past this, I'm going to be a little bit late, and log off, log off, log off. The computer screen goes off and it's like magic poof, gone.
Mm.
And that's all I need. All I need is that for that computer to be off and then move on to the next role.
Well, and when we were with you, we were out visiting you and we did a retreat last year. You had a little thing of mints in your car. And I
Oh, that's
remember
right.
you telling us, like, that's at the end of the day, no matter
That's my
how bad the
treat.
day is,
That's
that is
right.
my little treat for doing good work.
I can't believe you remember that. Yeah, so it's either a little mint or a little sugar-free gum, and that's like my little dopamine to kind of replete my little dopamine. That's my treat for the end of the day.
I do remember that because I thought I'm like, oh my God, that's the cutest thing ever. It's just a little mint or it's just a piece of gum, But it's
And
a
you know
little-
what's so funny? When I pick up the kids at the end of the, that's the first thing they go for, is they go for the little mint. They go for the little gum when they get into the car. So I like to have I like to have it full, because I know what it is. You had a busy day,
Yep.
and here's a little treat for job well done.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I think it's, like when pulling them all together, what they really are just different individual rituals to letting go of the day, pulling your energy back into yourself after you've given so much, letting work go, being able to, okay, close the computer down, I'm done, and just using it as a transition into the next version of you that you'd like to show up. And I think that, thank you all for so many wonderful examples, whether it's the dusting off physically and washing your hands, the Nancy, the spraying, and calling your energy back. And Gabby, I still do the mint. The mint in the computer is beautiful. And for me, it's I visualize a little basket outside of my door. So if I start to have thoughts that start to come up regarding work or anything else that I'm not wanting to think about at the time, it's time for you to go in the basket, and I'll pick you up later when it's time. Yeah.
I love
Well,
that.
ladies, thank you. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Nancy.
Oh, no, I was just going to agree with you. I like the basket.
Yeah, well, ladies, thank you so much. I think this was very informative and helpful, I think, for our listeners, and knowing that we all wear so many different hats, so many roles. There's different versions of us that show up complementary to each other, and sometimes not at all. And it's all part of the human experience. And thank you all for sharing your insights, and we'll chat next week.
Great topic, Beth.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Hey, one more thing before we leave. This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. We are certified professional coaches, but this broadcast is not a substitute for medical or psychological advice. Okay, thanks for listening. See you next week.